Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, let's make a deal. Trey gets real, and maybe it's not just the starters. It's all next. It's Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Hittin Hard is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We ask you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can get the latest episodes of Hittin Hard as soon as they become available. Also, check us out on the SiriusXM app and give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Let's make a deal. So, one of the guys that has now suddenly maybe become available, and this not been confirmed or anything like that, but is edge rusher Danielle Hunter, who for the Minnesota Vikings has been very productive over the last handful of years. He's had 3 of the last 4 years where he's had double-digit sacks, 14 and a half, 14 and a half, 6, 10 and a half. Now, in 2021, he dealt with a neck injury where he only played in 7 games and had 6 sacks in that time, but bounced back last year to have another 10 and a half sack season starting all 17 games. And this guy's an elite pass rusher, but he's not been able to come up with a contract for the Minnesota Vikings. So he has sat out OTAs, and now he's going to sit out mandatory minicamp, which does involve a fine, even though it's like $16,250, per day or whatever like that. So, but he is going to sit out mandatory minicamp, and he's going to get fined for it. Now, the impasse is basically the contract extension. So he's set to make $5.3 million this year. When you figure up all the bonuses and his base salary and all the good kind of stuff, he's only set to make $5.3 million this year. Part of that has been that they've moved money around to try to make him happy in this contract. They've tried to move money up for him. Okay. But now he's going to be a free agent come next year. And all the rumblings is that he is maybe not happy, or they can't figure out a way to get a contract done. And there's been, according to reports, and we always love those things that say, according to reports, that he is available in a possible trade. And teams have inquired about him as part of a trade. Now, why would they not? Okay. I mean, he's 28 years old, and he's got 71 sacks by the age of 28 years old. Why would anybody not want a guy like this? So here's what I say. Let's see. We have cash. So we still got plenty of cap space next year, that precious cap space that we, always talk about. We got plenty of cap space for next year. Got a lot of guys that are on 1-year contracts. I still have probably my biggest doubt when it comes to the pass rush. So, okay, that fits the need or what have you. So when you look at, again, he's not an old guy. He's not 35 years old like Calais Campbell or anything like that. So when you factor everything in, why would I not be in the mix for Danielle Hunter for the Falcons? Why would the Falcons not be in the mix for a guy like this? We need that fire breather coming off the edge. If you want to tell me that I have Hunter on one side and I have Arnold Ebiketie on another side, and those two guys feed off one another, perfect. But if this guy is going to end up getting moved, okay, and he wants a contract extension, if I can pay Jesse Bates $14 million a year to stand 10 yards away from from the line of scrimmage, why can't I pay Danielle Hunter? Yeah, I know AJ Terrell and all this kind of stuff. Guess what? You make it work. You do like the New Orleans Saints do, and figure out how to get everybody underneath the cap, right? I mean, because we're the only team in the NFL that seems to follow the rules of the cap and, stick to a certain guideline and everything else along with it. Doesn't feel like anybody else in the league has to follow along with the guidelines of the cap. It's just us. And we absorb all the dead money for, a player. Like nobody else does that but us. But I love the idea of a Danielle Hunter that could be here. Again, when you have a player of that caliber, figure out how to use him. I don't care if he's a traditional defensive end whatever, you figure out a way to use him. Third-round pick out of LSU, figure out a way to use a guy that has 71 sacks for his career. He had a stretch where he had back-to-back seasons of 14 and a half sacks. That's 29 sacks. We had 39 as an entire team the last 2 years. You hear me? He had 29 in a 2-year stretch. We had 39 in a 2-year period for our entire roster. You don't think we need help? Give me a break. And it's still the one thing that I am hung up about, and I will continue to drive this point home, is that you can't have too many guys to sack the quarterback. Let's all sing it together. You can't have too many guys to sack the quarterback. We talk about, I know D-Let has talked about, when I've had him on my show, that, you can't have too many corners and this and that. You think that you can't have too many guys to sack the quarterback? Did the Philadelphia Eagles last year look and say, well, we have too many guys that can sack the quarterback? I think Nick Sirianni stood up in front of the media and said, yeah, folks, I mean, we just have too many guys. We can't use these guys. We can't find a need for them. We can't find a way. Figure out a guy with when you got 71 sacks coming from one player on your roster, figure out how to do it. And look, I think he set the record for most sacks by the age of 25, or just some kind of crazy, ridiculous stat. But if the Vikings are backed into a corner and they're not going to have much of a choice to trade him, why can't we bring him in? We got the cap space, so we're not going to be fighting the cap space moving forward. We can offer him the big time extension. And I would certainly rather offer him an extension than I would the Lorenzo Carters and people like that. I like those guys, and they need to be part of your roster. But if I have to allocate money for him specifically to get this thing done, then again, use your cap space. Sign guys. Sign impact guys. Yes, I know that 2 years ago he dealt with the neck injury, but he's also started 17 games last year. He finished 12th in the NFL in comeback player of the year voting. He had 10 and a half sacks. Guess what? I'd kill to have a guy that had 10 and a half sacks. We can't be in the business of building our culture and this and that and everything like that, and talking to me about playoffs and divisions and all this kind of stuff, and then we're not in the mix for guys like this. Seriously. Like, how can you tell me about divisions and playoffs and we want this and that and the other, and then this guy is being called by every team in the league because he's sitting out OTAs, he's sitting out mandatory minis, he's not going to be there, he's not happy with the Minnesota Vikings organization, they can't get a contract done. Come down south here, son. Let's get a contract done with you. I'll negotiate it. I'll be the guy that negotiates the contract. What do you need? Me and Arthur Blank, we're going to take him to Chops and Bones. Take him to the Lobster Bar at Bones, and we're going to negotiate a contract deal, and we're going to get this guy here. You don't have a chance when you have too many young pass rushers that are sitting available that become on the marketplace. And if the Falcons are wise, they'll find a way to go in and bring a guy like this in. I know it may be pie in the sky and, all these other reasons. I mean, I know we have a million excuses why we can't have a guy like this on our roster. Well, he's going to cost too much, or, well, he doesn't want to be here, or, this and that. Oh, okay. Why can't I have a fire breather coming off the edge? Why can't I have one of those guys that I can line up and say, okay, that guy's going to give me 10 sacks next? Again, Nick Sirianni never got in front of the media and said, man, we just got too many guys that can sack the quarterback. We just got to get rid of some of these guys because they just got too many guys that can do it. No. 70 sacks. Where'd they end up? I can't remember right now. Where'd the Eagles end up? Oh, yeah, Super Bowl. Yeah. Well, certainly the team that finished second didn't get in. Oh, what? Oh, they won the Super Bowl? Oh, okay. Anyway. All right. So, well, anyway. All right. But Danielle Hunter, let's find a way to bring him in here. If he's truly unhappy and he can't work out a deal in Minnesota, let's figure out a way to get him here and give me that last piece that I'm missing, that fire breather off our defensive edge. All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As you know, FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and obviously, as the NBA playoffs have just wrapped up, listen, FanDuel's got you covered if you're a new customer. Head to FanDuel.com and sign up today and claim your no-sweat first bet, where if your first bet doesn't win, you can get as much as $2,500 in bonus bets. That's right, $2,500 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Now, FanDuel is safe, secure, super easy to use. Certainly, you can bet on everything from money lines to point spreads to how many homers this guy's going to hit and what have you. But FanDuel's got you covered with everything. So go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON and claim your no-sweat first bet, where you can get as much as $2,500 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn, FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON. FanDuel's the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Trae Young had his latest episode of the From the Point podcast, where back on June 9th, where he talked about the idea of wanting more. Here's his quote: "You always feel like you want more, like there's more out there. I mean, obviously, I haven't won anything. I haven't really won anything, to be honest with you. I've gone to the Eastern Conference Finals, which is cool, but in my eyes, if you don't win that championship, it ain't enough." So he went on to say that this year I didn't shoot the ball the best. I don't want to blame it on anything, but I feel like I could have been a lot better. I know I'm going into next year. I'm going to be a lot better and getting back to what my standards are for myself and even getting that higher. Now, I give him credit, again, taking some honesty, again, kind of self-reflecting on things like that. I mean, he wasn't that good. I mean, he didn't shoot the ball very well. His raw numbers are outstanding, right? I mean, 27 points, 10 assists and things like that. But when you dive deeper into things and you see more of the game, again, he was a guy that struggled as well. I had a lot of other guys that struggled along with him. John Collins did not have a very good year for whatever reason. DeAndre Hunter was a really mixed bag throughout the regular season. Some nights he would be really good. Some nights he'd be just disappearing from this team. Murray was pretty consistent. Capella was pretty consistent for what they asked him on. But, look, if this franchise is going to get where we want it to be, if this franchise is going to get to that next level and to that, ultimate championship level, Trae Young is going to lead us there. He's going to be the guy that's going to lead us in all of this. And he's the one guy that I've said that I don't think that he gets moved, and I don't think that there's any desire to move him or what have you. He says, "I'm not necessarily trying to just chase that, but I know if I do, it's getting my teammates involved, just making everybody else everybody else around me get paid. That's important to me. So that's really the main thing for me, is just trying to get my teammates involved and trying to lead the league in assists every year, because I know that's going to make my teammates happier." It's tough when you're declining and when you go from the conference finals down, but it's also hard to get to that point. Well, again, look, it's not been a last couple of years that has been a banner year for Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. And, again, it's been a situation where as Trae Young goes, the Atlanta Hawks go. And we've talked about maybe that's not necessarily a good thing. Maybe that's not necessarily a good thing that everything has to be on Trae Young to do everything. And certainly, look, getting his teammates involved and all that good kind of stuff, that's all great. And I can appreciate all of that. But, he's a guy that also needs to be better. And sometimes the best way is not just getting your teammates involved, but leading by example. Sometimes the best way that you can do things is to lead by example, where Trae Young plays well, he shoots well, and all these other little things that go along with it. And maybe that, motivates guys to be better in their game and have to elevate and step up their game, because they're looking at their teammate and saying, well, if he's doing this, I got to carry my load. I got to carry the weight for what I have to do. So this is why this, again, now we're officially into the off season, right? Draft is what, 8 days away. I mean, draft is a week from Thursday, right? And that player will be most likely stashed and dashed when it comes to, going down to the Skyhawks. I mean, again, that guy's going to get off a plane, and instead of taking a northbound train on MARTA to head up to somewhere, he's going to probably take that shuttle bus, that shuttle train or whatever like that drops you off in College Park, and he's going to go right to the arena. Right? I mean, that would be my plan. I mean, what I don't even worry about what the 15th pick is going to be in this draft. I worry about basically what this guy's going to do, come a few years from now. We'll worry about all that. I got to get my regular roster right. And Trey is obviously a huge part of all of that. And again, it's not fair, but as we've always said, as Trey goes, this franchise goes. And I thought that we would have moments that we would get out of some of that, where we don't have to rely on Trae Young for everything, that we've got a good core all the way around. The Warriors don't count on Steph Curry for every single thing. They rely on Draymond Green to be that defensive stopper and that rebounder. They rely on Klay Thompson to be that great shooter. So, again, we have to find those role pieces to go along with Trae Young. That's why I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen with this roster. I'm fascinated to see what this thing is going to look like at the end of the day. I think there's changes that are coming, but certainly Trae with a moment of reflection about the fact that he hasn't won anything. He wants to get his teammates better. But I will say that the best thing Trae Young can do is lead by example, elevate his own game. And if your teammates can't come up with you, then you probably don't have the right teammates. It doesn't have to all be on Trae Young to motivate and lead these guys. It's on Trae Young to play really well. And then what do they say? That the high tide rises all ships? That's the scenario for the Atlanta Hawks. It's not just Trae Young that's got to be better. Everybody's got to be better along with it. And if Trae Young leads by example, more than just trying to get people involved, if he leads by example, then we can get to where we need to be. And if somebody's not carrying their weight, then you got to figure out how to either get rid of that person or you make them better. That's for Quinn Snyder and those guys to figure all of that out. So it's going to be a fascinating offseason. We're certainly excited about everything along with it. And look, starts with the draft. We'll get that out of the way. And then here comes free agency. And I'll be fascinated to see what the Hawks do to navigate their way through the waters of this roster. That are they going to be a luxury tax team or not? If we're not going to be a luxury tax team, then we got all kinds of problems that we'll discuss down the road as we figure it all out. All right, as you make Hittin' Hard your first listen, make sure you go into the comment section of whatever podcast platform that you're listening on and let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program. We like to call them our everydayers, and we thank you so much for being a part of our community. Check us out on all your platforms, but when you go in, leave us a comment that let us know that you're an everydayer, as we like to say, that you listen into Hittin' Hard 5 days a week, and we thank you so much for being a part of our community. Well, maybe it's not just our starting pitching. We've been fighting this idea that the starters are, have been the problem just because for the Braves that, we're down 2 spots in our rotation, Elder, Strider, Morton, there are solidifying starters, and we're bullpen gaming and all these other things, our way through it. And we're talking about the idea of, okay, do we need to go out and get another starter? Need to find a guy who can solidify another spot in the rotation and this, that, and the other. But maybe at the end of the day, maybe it's our bullpen that needs upgrading. Maybe our bullpen needs upgrading. Now, again, I don't know if it's, overworking. Some guys who just can't get it done. You have nights like this and this, that, and the other. But, again, last night, it was a wasted effort from Charlie Morton, who really needed that bounce back game. And I talked about this on the radio. I literally said, look, this feels like a get right game for Charlie Morton because it's against the Tigers. They're not very good. They're not a very good offensive team. And this feels like a get right game. Well, he did his job, 5 2/3, 4 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 8 strikeouts. So literally 8 of his 17 outs that he recorded were via strikeout, 104 pitches in it, and he did his job. And then you get to the bullpen. McHugh gives up a run. Anderson gives up a run. Iglesias blows the save. He gave up 3 runs. And then, Jimenez comes in and he allows the run, in the 10th inning, that Fakak the rule, allows the run in the 10th inning, and the Tigers close it out. And that's, again, for all the good things that the Braves have done, it does kind of make you scratch your head about, we've had struggles beating the Oakland A's and the Detroit Tigers. But again, when we start talking about all these things with what the Braves need and this, that, and the other, maybe they need some upgrades in their bullpen. It doesn't feel like that this bullpen at times gets it done. Now, look, Minter's had his struggles, right? Excuse me. We know Minter has had his struggles. Chavez has been really good by and large. I mean, he's been very effective. He's been one of the more effective relievers coming out of the bullpen. Iglesias has been good since he's gotten back. He's got 9 saves, but he does have a couple of blown saves in the mix and all that. But he's been pretty good. Yates has been okay. Anderson's been okay. But maybe we need some more bullpen help. Maybe, some of the idea and the stress of, these guys have pitched a good bit so far this year. I don't know. I mean, I don't have really what the answers are in it, but we keep talking about starter. We need to go out and find another starter. And I don't disagree with all that notion. I don't disagree with the idea of finding another starter. We were hoping that Michael Soroka could be a guy that could at least stabilize one of those rotational spots, right? That if he had Elder, Strider, Morton, that Michael Soroka could come up here and stabilize that other spot. At least be that 4th starter and get yourself stabilized, and then we can figure out the rotation of guys, the Schusters and Dylan Dodds and, everybody else, and AJ Smith-Shavers, and we can figure out that final spot in the rotation, mixing and matching. But the bullpen games have not gone very well for the Braves. When you don't get deep into games and some of these starts for guys, then you start burning up your bullpen and you start having to use it. And I know Snicker likes to use his bullpen. He likes to match up with his bullpen anyway. But maybe the Braves need some more relief help, though. Maybe the answer is not just a starting pitcher to help eat up some innings and take some of the pressure off of our bullpen. Maybe it's finding another horse or two down in the bullpen. And look, Alex Anthopoulos will figure out a way to get this thing right. I mean, I don't have any doubts about that. And it's not a matter of trust factor or this or that, or, certainly, his track record proves that he's going to find the players that he needs to. But maybe we start looking for upgrades into our bullpen. Hasn't been awful. I mean, it's not been, a disaster or whatever like that, but there's no reason why against the Detroit Tigers, you should have nights like last night. When your bullpen comes in and gives up all 6 runs, your starter got you through 5 innings plus. He got you almost to 6 innings of no-run baseball, and then you blow a lead and against the Detroit Tigers. And that more than anything is just the quality of the opponent. That's where it gets frustrating, is when you blow leads against those kinds of guys. I can understand, even if it's basically was a guy who, had been struggling over the last 4 starts, you get a really good start for it, and then you blow the lead. And against the Detroit Tigers, like I said, I can understand if it's the LA Dodgers or somebody, of good quality, but you can't afford to blow leads like that. But obviously, by and large, look, it's been nothing but bouquets of roses for the Atlanta Braves. But as we start talking about, needing this guy and that guy and a starting pitcher here or this, that, and the other who becomes available, maybe it's fine. Maybe we need to try to find a little bit more bullpen help. Maybe we need to find some guys that can come in and close out the door and just make sure that games like last night don't happen. And I understand it's baseball, 162 games, and all these other things that come on. But, again, it's a situation where this team expects to win, and they beat up on these teams, and obviously you sweep the Mets and, you play really well in Arizona and all this, that, and the other, and then you kind of blow a lead against the Detroit Tigers. So, again, while it's all good, And I understand, look, it's a situation where, we're looking for a starter, but maybe we need to add some bullpen help at the end of the day. All right, well, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen. Be sure to leave us a comment when you go in and let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program. So whatever podcast platform that you're on, let us know that you're an everyday listener to the program. We call them our everydayers. We thank you so much for being a part of our ever-growing community. You can check us out on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can get the latest episodes of Hittin' Hard as soon as they become available. Also, check us out on the Sirius XM app as well. And then give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. We'll be back with you tomorrow. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked on Sports Atlanta.